Hey guys, how we doing? Cameron here again for another episode of Industry Insights. Hopefully you enjoyed watching last week's episode. This week is a little bit slightly different. Rather than focusing on a specific engineering company, I'm here with Jack McNaught from International Internships, and his company is kind of devoted to providing internship opportunities for students across Australia. First of all, Jack, how are you doing? It's good to see you again.
Hi, Cam. Good to see you too. Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Perfect, and hopefully you've been coping well with recent events. Can you maybe just give us a bit more background about your role in international internships as a company?
Yep, sure. International Internships runs programs for students overseas. So, we work with a number of Australian universities and facilitate internships, as the name suggests, but also study tours and a range of programs.
Mm.
I started it back in 2004 when it was Indonesian internships.
Okay.
After not not too long after I graduated and spent 6 months abroad, and then I was sort of working academic and looked for an opportunity to keep the link with Indonesia.
Yeah.
And that turned into Indonesian internships, which has now become international internships. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So you kind of built the company up from the ground up, just with that Indonesia link as mainly as the core kind of concept of how you've structured these programs. Would you say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was built by a pure just kind of love for Indonesia, and naive or enthusiasm, we'll say, of recent university graduate.
Yeah.
Just throwing myself into it and kind of all eventually evolved. Yeah, basically.
Has it always kind of been just that same focus, or maybe the same program that you've offered, or has things kind of evolved over the years with the program?
Yeah, it's really changed. So when we first started, I think the only people really considering an experience in Indonesia were people studying Indonesian language.
Okay.
So in the early 2000s, there were a couple of incidents in Indonesia, like the bombings in
Yeah.
Bali. It was shortly after the war on terror, and I think a
Mm.
lot, Islam actually had a bit of a bad rap. It still does to some extent, but particularly at the time in Indonesia.
Mm.
Um, Whereas over time, I think governments in Australia and the general public have recognised the importance of Indonesia as a trading partner, as a neighbour, etc. So what we're finding now is that more and more people from all different areas are really interested in going there for work experience
Okay.
and other opportunities.
Very cool. So I mean, obviously, your company is built around these internship programs, specifically with Indonesia for first and foremost, but you've branched out a little bit. Can you maybe just tell the guys listening at home what exactly is involved in one of your internship programs?
Yeah, sure. So it varies hugely, and particularly now with COVID
Of course.
and borders closed, it's changed
Mm.
again. So traditionally, when it's in country, we work with each student to find them a placement. Is the kind of the centerpiece of the program,
Mm.
and that's a very individual, tailored process. So we'll
Okay.
start off by having a long chat, talking about what you're studying, what your goals are, where you're heading with your career, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you might want to work on.
Yeah.
And from that, we'll then link you up with companies. And that process continues into where you're working and roughly what your role will be. Um, then, apart from that, there's obviously in country a whole lot of other stuff. So you get linked with a local student as a buddy, and
Okay.
they come along for experiences.
Mm.
Networking events. So we work closely with the Indonesia Australia Business Council and a range of other organisations like that. So you get to meet professionals in your field
Okay.
and in general.
Mm.
There'll be functions at the Australian Embassy. There's like weekend trips, go, a bit of
Yeah.
get out of Jakarta
Yeah.
or
Very
wherever you're
cool.
into, whitewater
Mm.
rafting or go to Thousand Islands or something like that.
Mm.
Then the language classes, lots of social events. So as I say, there's always a big group over there in country.
Yeah.
So there'll be movie nights and, or
Yeah.
opportunity to interact with the Indonesian students that are taking part. and so on.
So it sounds like there's heaps going on. So I mean, how long would one of these programs normally last for then?
Depends on what you're studying. So we've got programs that are as short as a couple of weeks, right through to year-long programs.
So it sounds like there's a lot on offer in these programs. It's almost like every weekend you've got something else going on. So how long would these programs or these internships normally last for students?
Yeah, so that's completely, it varies from kind of to cover the requirements of different disciplines at the university. So there's programs as short as a couple of weeks, so there's study intensives and so on. But even for the internships, you can go for as little as 3 weeks on what's called internship, where you work alongside other Australian students and Indonesian students for an organisation, right through to year-long programs, and everything. We've got 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and so on.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's heaps on offer and lots of options and variability, so you could kind of chop and change around maybe your university semester as required type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also choose your start date. So we do have like particular RMIT programs with set start dates, but you've also got the flexibility to start on any Monday that you choose.
Definitely. And so, I mean, I think the benefits of doing an internship are quite obvious to a lot of people, but obviously your setup is a little bit different. What would you say is kind of the main benefit, or maybe the biggest benefit people can get from doing an internship internationally overseas?
Yeah, sure. So as I say, my background is academia. I spent 10 years at Deakin, actually, working as a finance lecturer. So I see what happens in the classroom, and I kind of compare it with what happens in country.
Okay.
And I think the thing that people get by traveling is that real personal growth.
Definitely.
You are undoubtedly, in any internship, you're faced with challenges that you have to overcome. That's work. So in university, you get given a problem. It's got very set parameters. You have to do this many words, you have to tackle these areas, and so on. Whereas the workplace is not like that. It's always open-ended. You can tackle a problem 12 different ways, 100 different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to think about that. But there's always obstacles, there's always unknowns, and you've got to overcome them. And I think doing an internship in general exposes you to that in a way that university can't, the classroom can't. And doing an internship with another culture, so where you've got extra challenges such as intercultural communication, potentially language barriers, just the ways of going about things in one country and in another country are completely different. So kind of working with all of that really adds to that personal growth as well.
Definitely. And I mean, just knowing personally from some of the travels and some of the work I've done overseas, it's such a different experience to doing an internship at home, I'd say. And definitely those extra challenges that you've stated, and just kind of the cultural experience you get from doing it puts everything into a different perspective, and it almost makes you that little bit more knowledgeable or cautious whenever you go into a new work environment, either at home or abroad, and gives you that extra kind of insight and different approach to doing things that is often super beneficial to your work.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
So going on from that, another point actually, and it goes back to why I started the organisation in the first place. So I went for a university, and I think I did a ski season in Canada, which was great fun. But there's as many Australians on the slopes there as there are Canadians, and the most similar culture, maybe with New Zealand or something, to Australia anyway. I kind of cruised through university in some respects, but then I went for a year abroad, which included 6 months volunteering in Indonesia, a few months in America, and so on. And when I went for jobs, I got good grades and so on. When I went for jobs pre my year abroad, I'd get to the final interview stage, and I didn't get any further because they would ask me, name a time that shown initiative to overcome a problem or something like that.
Yeah, that's always the worst question to answer.
In this group assignment, I blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You could kind of see glazed over at that point. And I don't think I had the confidence to back it up. You know, when you get in a job interview, you have to convince the employer that you can solve their problems, because that's why people hire people. And I don't think I had that confidence. You know, it was quite right. Whereas after the year abroad, when I volunteered and I was in Indonesia for the tsunami, so I ended up going over to like Aceh and distributing aid, and I just had all these things to talk about.
Exactly.
And the self-confidence that I could solve problems because I'd been there and I'd done it. And I got a job with, you know, the Australian government, which was the one that I really wanted at the time. So, yeah, that's another reason that people, you know, adding to that kind of personal growth. It's when you go for jobs, you've got the experience to give them, you know, proof that you can do what they're asking for, and you've got the confidence to back it up.
100%. And I mean, RMIT in particular has always had a massive focus on internships. I know for us in our chemical engineering degrees, until I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it was actually a course requirement that we did at least 12 weeks placement with a company. That has been removed a while back due to some administration issues, but it's still seen as such a valuable part of a degree, and it's still a valid option for a lot of people to do. So, I mean, your programs that you offer, are they actually eligible for RMIT credits?
Yes. So we work closely with RMIT, and the program has been running for several years. So back when it was a compulsory component of the degree, and then obviously it changed and became an optional part. And yeah, we work closely with the academics, the WIL team, within RMIT Engineering to administer it.
Perfect.
So we organise a form to get signed by the host organisation. We give all the information you need to enrol in the unit. And as I say, we're in constant conversation with the WIL team at RMIT to make sure that it goes through.
So there's a heaps of communication back and forth. So there's no real confusion for students trying to entering the program, and it's very easy to kind of get those credit points from doing this overseas experience.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we work with you through all of those steps.
Perfect.
Can't say there'll be any confusion for anyone, but we'll make sure that we work with you and closely with the WIL team to make sure we're sorted and get there. Yeah.
And so obviously all of these internships you said before are personally tailored to each of the students that are coming along. Obviously for us working in chemical engineering, that narrows down the field quite considerably compared to someone maybe just working in a business field or working towards a commerce degree. What sort of companies have you placed chemical engineering students with before, and then how have they kind of found their experience working there?
Yeah, cool. So this is where I should have prepared a list for you, but off the top of my head, we've worked with like Blue Scope Steel. I know we've had chemical engineers there. Pacific Brands. So Pacific Brands makes all the Bonds underwear and so on. Engineers there. ACOM has hosted a number of chemical engineers, including.
I did spend 12 weeks there and did love every minute of it.
We work with others like there's an organisation called Arcadis, which is a bit like ACOM. They do a bit of everything, a lot of construction,
a lot of consulting, construction work and project management type stuff.
Yeah. Do I say Axo Nobel? No, Axo Nobel, which makes Lux paint and so on. And Akabono Astra, which is a kind of car. Astra is the biggest car manufacturer in Indonesia, and Akabono work on particularly brakes and so on.
Okay, very cool. And so, do you find out a lot about what exactly the work is that these students will do at these companies, or is that maybe something that's more kept between the company and the student?
Yeah, so with the engineering placements, they're 12 weeks. So we don't micromanage that between the host and the student. The relationship is direct. Our role is to work with each party and make sure it's a good fit, and we try to arrange a Skype interview before the placement's confirmed, so that both sides kind of determine that for themselves. Then we'll work with the host to make sure they're prepared and there's work ready for the student when they arrive. And then our role swaps to being more of a kind of intermediary. So we'll have regular catch-up with the student and make sure, are you getting enough work? What are you working on? Are you having any challenges with management and so on? But that relationship is direct between the student and the organisation, particularly given that, as I say, engineering placements are usually quite long to fulfil the credit requirements. They become very close, obviously, during that time.
And obviously, some of these companies, especially when you're working on more sensitive materials, they sometimes have NDA contracts involved, so the students can't actually say what they're working on.
Yeah, students love that. Yeah, that smug, like, I can't tell.
Well,
yeah, right.
We've got to relish it. It is the first time we've ever had the chance to say that, so we got to live it up as much as we can.
I completely get it. It's just frustrating because you're like, I want to know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the general feedback from some of the students who work in these 12-week placements? Is it that they've had a great experience with the work, or maybe the work's been more challenging than they were expecting? What's the general kind of consensus like?
Yeah. I mean, the general consensus is, really positive. And we have thorough feedback sessions with as many people upon return as possible. So we can always, take that and develop things. But it is a challenge. There's no hiding the fact that it's a challenge. I think, going back to kind of what I said before, when you enter the workforce for the first time, it's challenging. If you do that in Australia, working, full hours after university, often on, more kind of just one task for a longer period, having a boss to answer to impress to, but also fitting into an organisation and finding, getting work to do and balancing, pushing for extra work, but not being too.
It definitely is a different dynamic that you just have to get accustomed to.
And I remember when I first worked, I was exhausted. I'd come home at the end of the day and it just knackered because it's using a whole range of skills you haven't really used before. So it's challenging for sure. And as I say, the intercultural component is another level on that. But the feedback is generally that people love Indonesia. A lot of people that never considered going to Indonesia, particularly in engineering, it's not maybe at the front of people's minds. People think Germany, people think Japan, but they realise how much is going on there and what the opportunities are. And they also learn about the Indonesian culture, which is, everyone that goes to Indonesia or that interacts with Indonesians falls in love with Indonesian culture.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's a challenging experience like that. Has ups and downs, has peaks and troughs, but it's a positive experience, and almost every time people would recommend it to others to come on the program, which is how we've been able to run it for 5 years, and always oversubscribed, which is great.
So it's always nice when you get that kind of feedback and that kind of person-to-person promotion of the program. So obviously there's a lot more involved than just the work itself. Can you give us a bit more insight into maybe some of the programs and maybe different offers that you have outside of work for people taking part in the internships?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it depends a bit. As I say, we're pivoting to online at the moment. So what we've done with online to introduce that is reflect as much as possible what would happen in country. So we've tried to make it comprehensive an experience as we can. Elements of the programs, both online and in country, are professional workshops. So like I say, we work closely with business councils like, the American Chamber of Commerce, Australia Indonesian Business Council, and the Australian Embassy and so on, Victorian Trade and Investment Office in Indonesia. So speakers from organisations like that, as well as companies, will address the students and give a presentation, have long Q&As and so on. We have networking sessions, and that will be reflected online as well. So a big part of the program is meeting people. I didn't touch on that one before,
Definitely.
but making in your field and just generally international business. And so, yeah, we'll have networking sessions. As well as that, we've got the intercultural stuff, and we've got like movie nights online, cooking classes online.
Oh, very nice.
We actually had one last. Got a group doing it mid-year, and the first proper cooking class for that one. And everyone had a great time.
Yeah, I can imagine everyone getting involved in that with the whole trend of everyone getting into baking now that everyone's in isolation and lockdown type thing.
Yeah, and as I say, the Indonesian food is amazing. Yeah. So learning how to cook, that's really cool. We have like tours of Borobudur, which is like a 7th century temple in central Java.
Very cool.
We have intercultural sharing sessions with the Indonesian students. So all of that happens in our online programs in addition to the internships themselves.
Okay.
And pretty similar to what happens in country, just as I say, in a different format.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all this kind of going on, when you kind of get some feedback and insights from students who finish the program or are already on the program, what would you say is like maybe the main highlight that these students have from their time in Indonesia?
I think it's the work, probably. If I had to say, one, it's the work that they do with the organisations, which is often at a level beyond what the responsibility they would get in Australia would be. They've been able to be involved in these projects that they never imagined themselves being involved in, until much later in their career, basically. So I think if I had to pick the one highlight, it would be that from what we've spoken about with students, but then also the relationships that they form as well.
Definitely. I mean, that's the cornerstone of most internships as well. Like, obviously, it's the work first, getting that experience under your belt and kind of understanding what normally goes on, but then also making those connections, having those names you can put down on a resume, or those names of people who can maybe flick you a bit of work later on in the future. It really does make all the difference.
And as I say, even connecting with others, doing engineering. Like, I know a lot of the time people go through university and make friendships, but it's harder to take those friendships from uni to the next level sometimes, where you really get to know each other and you sort of become lifelong friends.
Definitely.
Whereas I think doing a program like this can really lead to that, both with other Australians and also the Indonesians. And like I say, with the online experience, we've tried to mirror that as much as possible.
Yeah, so I mean, just building on that with the online experience. So we've already talked a bit about the in-country experience and the different variability in terms of programs you have on offer there. But I mean, obviously with current events and COVID-19 kind of putting a bit of a block to that, you could say. What kind of programs have you currently got on offer for students?
Yeah, so the online, and particularly, we've got a range. We've got the team internships, which is running right now, but we'll run them periodically throughout the year.
Okay.
And that's generally 3 Australians and 1 Indonesian all work in a team for an organisation, complete a project-based internship. Now, that's typically 3 weeks, 3 to 4. But we've also got kind of part-time options happening over a longer period and so on. So it's a bit flexible. And that's one big benefit of the online programs, that we can be more flexible. Obviously, when you go in, it has to be full-time, but we can work these around other commitments like study or jobs and so on. So that's the team internships. And then there's the individual internships, which is pretty much what I described before. It's completely tailored. Work with, you, the student, and the company to link you together and make sure it's a completely tailored, relevant experience for your career growth and so on. And both those, the team and the individual, include all the extra elements, the cooking classes, or the networking events, the professional sessions, and so on.
Yeah.
Well.
And are they all still being offered online currently until you can kind of get that travel organised again? Okay.
Absolutely. You know, when we went into the online with COVID, we spent the last few months kind of innovating, I guess. We had some students in country when they then had to come back due to corona. And some of them kept going with their internships online.
Okay.
Then we've been just further and further building what we're offering online to make it as immersive as possible. So working actually alongside an Indonesian student at the same organisation, so you've still got that intercultural communication and so on. And interestingly, talking to employers and seeing a number of surveys and so on, one of the key things that they look for now is students with experience working remotely.
Okay. I suppose everyone's got a experience for that now.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But like seriously, workplace forecasts will never go back to what they were after this.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's forced companies big and small to engage in, you know, remote working. And there's that, and there's things that will never replace face-to-face, but a lot of it's forecast that it will never go back to what it was, and therefore looking for graduates with experience. So you're getting the kind of intercultural communication, so you're still working across borders and remotely, which ticks even more boxes from the point of view of employers.
Definitely. And so how can students at RMIT get involved in any of these programs?
So they can apply. We'll be promoting, like, if you haven't received any promotion from RMIT yet, that will be coming through email outs and so on.
Okay, perfect.
But otherwise, on our website, which is internationalinternships.com.au, if you go down to online internships, you can apply for an individual internship there. And if you come through that channel, you will end up linking you up with RMIT anyway. You'll go through the same kind of system.
Okay.
But yeah, otherwise it's also listed on MOBI, which is the international program area.
Yeah.
And there's an application form link there as well.
Yeah, perfect. And so what's kind of involved in getting a student enrolled in one of these programs? Is there any kind of costs involved, or is there any kind of university or government assistance that can kind of be applied for to help with that, or?
Yeah, good question. There are costs, obviously. There's our fee, but we are offering 50% scholarships at the moment for the online experiences. So that's for students going in semester 2. And then over summer, we've actually got some government funding for international experiences, which may be opened up and may make it effectively either free or effectively free. We're just waiting for an announcement from the government on that.
Okay.
But it is very possible that it will be, close to free, if not free. So what I would recommend is we hope for that any day. We're just waiting to hear. But if students kind of send an application or send us an email, we can definitely put you on a list. And then the moment we know whether that funding is available and whether therefore there's fully paid for placements, and otherwise we'll send you the costs and so on as well.
Okay. So with all of that kind of pretty much taken care of, I guess the last thing to say is like, what kind of advice would you give to students who are looking to get involved, or students who are kind of already preparing to get involved in one of these programs?
I mean, I would say do it. It's obviously my job to say do it, but whether it's our program or another one, do challenge yourself. I speak from experience. Like I say, back in the day, I went through uni and got good grades, but really just cruised. And it wasn't enough then, and that was early 2002 or 3 I graduated. Show my age there. But it wasn't enough then, and since when I did it, the absolute minority of students did an extra experience, intercultural experience, whereas today the landscape's completely changed, and it's almost the majority. So the fact that work integrated unit, learning unit has become optional within engineering at RMIT, you shouldn't see it as optional. You should see it as compulsory, because I think it really is compulsory to have that to be a contender for the top graduate positions, which are getting even harder to get.
Yeah, that's one thing. Those top graduate positions are often incredibly challenging to get into, and rather than just trying to aim for the best grades to try and get a position there, more and more the companies are asking for that extracurricular activity. They're asking for that previous experience of some kind, and that really has become a driving factor behind just even access to a lot of these top positions, I reckon.
Absolutely. And the logic behind that is they can teach you, the organisation can teach you the specific skills that you need to be able to do a job there. But what they can't do is the problem solving, the resilience, all of that, which you get from a more kind of rounded experience. So, answering your question, I would say you need a work integrated learning, like an internship experience as part of your degree. You just need one, and you really need an international intercultural experience as well. So whether it's this or whether you chase do that through another path, I wouldn't see them as compulsory, as optional anymore. I'd see them as
Perfect. Well, thanks for telling us all about international internships and kind of giving people access to that international option of studying abroad and finding those internship and work integrated kind of skills through international internships. It's been great talking to you again. Thanks for coming on. For everyone listening at home, hope you guys enjoyed this and got a lot out of it, and you found maybe a different avenue you can pursue some work experience through international internships. Maybe you've been knocked back from a program locally, or you don't quite meet the skill requirements of some of those graduate positions. Guys at home, seriously, this is a great way to kind of build up those personal skills. As always, remember to like, share, and comment on the video. We've actually just started a YouTube channel, so all the videos that we post on our Facebook page will now be available on our YouTube channel as well. But for now, we'll see you guys next week.